Welcome to VIVEKA Learning Extra. The topic is health and disease. This video is created by Satakshi Ma'am and edited by VIVEKA Learning Extra.
Today we are going to learn a chapter from Class 9 Science syllabus under the CBSE board, Health and Diseases. So what is health? It is the well-being of oneself and it depends on the physical surroundings and economic status. Health can be classified as good health and bad health. So good health is when we are able to do our daily activities, and bad health when we are unable to do our daily activities. For example, our mothers do the household chores on a daily basis. If one day she is unable to get up from the bed and do the household work, then we say that she is having a bad health. Whereas the days when she is able to do all the household work, then she is having a good health. Therefore, health is a state of well-being where we are able to function physically, mentally, and socially. Now, one cannot achieve a well-being on their own, so it depends on various factors. These are physical environment, such as pollution. We know that pollution affects our health badly. And a social environment, such as villages and cities. It is the place where we stay. So, the kind of health we will have is also dependent on the place we stay. Obviously, in villages, there are cases where people don't have good quality of water, or they don't have good hygiene manners. But in cities, people always follow good hygiene and they have good water supply. Another factor is public hygiene. Suppose if no one is taking the responsibility of removing the garbage, or if there is an open drainage system, definitely it will affect our health. Therefore, all of these factors lead to a poor health. So, we need to maintain public cleanliness for individual health. Now, another factor is good food. In order to be healthy, we need to obtain good food. And good food can only be obtained when we earn the food by working. So, for earning, it is necessary that we have the opportunity to work. Therefore, happy life is equals to healthy life. So, if a person is not having the right amount of nourishment, right amount of food, then he will obviously have a bad health. Therefore, everyone needs to be treated equally, and so social equality and peace is required for everyone's health. So, what is the difference between being healthy and disease-free? What do we mean by disease? Mainly we can say that when a disease occurs, we feel uncomfortable or we don't feel well. What is the reason behind it? So, it is not always necessary to have a reason behind being uncomfortable. Poor health is not always equals to suffering from a disease. Also, not having a disease does not mean that you are healthy. For example, good health for a dancer is when she or he is able to show graceful postures with difficulty. Poor health can be without any cause, represented by a disease. Now we come to the section disease and its causes. So when a disease occurs, functioning of our body is worsened. Therefore, it shows various signs and symptoms. So what is the difference between signs and symptoms? Symptoms are those that is felt by the individual who is affected by the disease, such as cough, headache, loose motion. But symptoms is not the exact indication of the disease. Whereas signs are those which physicians look for based on the symptoms. Signs gives a definite indication of the presence of the disease. Now we will discuss about two kinds of diseases. One is the acute disease and another is the chronic disease. Both these type of diseases, they have different effects on our health. So let's see what is the basic difference. Acute diseases last for a short period of time, such as common cold. And chronic diseases, they last for a long time, or it can even last for lifetime. For example, infections such as elephantiasis, it is a common disease in India. Another difference is that acute diseases have less effect on our functioning of the body. That means it does not affect our body so that our body becomes non-functional. But the chronic disease shows major effect on our body. So, for example, cough and cold, when these cough and cold happens, we get well within a week or so. Whereas in chronic diseases such as tuberculosis, it makes us ill for years. Another difference is that acute disease will stop our daily activities for a few days, whereas chronic disease will show long-term effects and we'll have a prolonged poor health. Now we will come to the section causes of disease. There are many levels of disease. For example, if a baby is suffering from loose motion, it may be due to the infection. But how did the baby got an infection? It may be due to unsafe drinking water. But why the other babies are not sick? Because the baby that got sick was not healthy. So he or she will have the disease when exposed to the risk, and the risk is unsafe drinking water. Therefore, not being healthy is the first cause. So why the baby is not healthy? Because the baby is not getting enough food. So he or she is not well nourished. So lack of nourishment is the second cause of disease. These causes are further affected by factors such as environmental and physical factors. These are poor public health services and poverty. Now, the causes of the disease can be again classified into infectious disease and non-infectious disease. So the infectious causes are the ones which are caused by the infectious agents, especially the microorganisms. So here the microorganisms are the immediate causes. For example, Helicobacter pylori is a microorganism that is responsible for peptic ulcer or gastric ulcer. Now the non-infectious causes are the causes that is not caused by the infectious agents, and the internal causes such as genetic abnormalities are responsible for this. So these genetic abnormalities can be of various types. So for example, high blood pressure, it can be caused by excessive weight gain and lack of exercises. Now we come to the section infectious diseases. Now infectious agents can be categorized into two categories. One that is caused by the viruses, bacteria, fungi, single-celled animals or protozoans, and the other that is caused by multicellular organisms such as worms. Example of this category is viruses that cause disease such as common cold, influenza, dengue fever and AIDS. Bacteria causes disease such as typhoid fever, cholera, tuberculosis and anthrax. Fungi causes most of the common skin infections, and protozoans causes malaria and kala azar or black fever. Examples of diseases caused by multicellular organisms are elephantiasis caused by various species of worms. Now, why did we categorize these disease causing agents? Because we need to decide the kind of treatment to be used. As we know that viruses have similarity within themselves, that is, they can live inside the host, whereas all the bacteria are closely related to each other than to the viruses, which means that not all microorganisms show the same kind of characteristic. This categorization is also important because if one type of drug that will act against the members of the same group will not act against the microbe of a different group, such as antibiotics. Antibiotics are those agents that block the biochemical pathways in bacteria, such as penicillin, that stops the process of building cell wall in a bacteria, whereas it will not affect the human cells. Why? Because human cells lack a cell wall. But we have seen that antibiotics do not act against the viruses. We have often seen doctors do not prescribe antibiotics against viral infection, whereas they do prescribe antibiotics for bacterial infection. How do the infections spread? So the infections that spread are known as communicable diseases because they can be communicated. There are different modes of transmission. So the first mode is through the animal carrier, where animals carry the infectious agent from a sick person and spread it to another healthy person. So these animals are known as vectors. For example, we have seen that mosquitoes usually transfer disease-causing agents such as dengue viruses or malaria viruses from the infected person to another host by feeding the blood of the host. The second form is through air. It is also known as airborne diseases. It spreads the infectious agents in the form of tiny droplets from the infected person who either sneezes or coughs. So the one who is standing nearby the infected person can breathe in these droplets, and then the microbes inside these droplets begin a new infection. Example, common cold, pneumonia, and tuberculosis. Another form is through water, or known as waterborne diseases. It can be spread from the excreta of a person who is suffering from this disease. It gets mixed with the drinking water, and this drinking water is used by different people living in that area, and they get the disease through this water. For example, cholera. The last form is through sexual contact. It does not spread through physical contact, but specifically sexual contact. For example, AIDS, syphilis. It can also be spread through blood contact or during pregnancy. Now we come to the section organ-specific and tissue-specific manifestation. So what happens to the body when the disease-causing microbes enter the body? Different species of the microbes have different entry points in the body. It can either enter through the mosquito bite, through the nose, through the mouth, or through sexual organs. So when it enters through the mosquito bite, this infectious agent or this microbe then enters the liver and then to the red blood cells or RBCs. This happens, or this pathway is followed by Japanese encephalitis causing virus. When this infectious agent enters the nose, it goes to the lungs, and in this case it affects the lungs. So this pathway is followed by bacteria that causes tuberculosis. When the infectious agent enters through the mouth, it goes to the gut lining, and this is seen in case of typhoid causing bacteria. Also, in an alternative way, it can go to the liver, and this is seen in case of jaundice causing virus. When the infectious agent enters through the sexual organs, it spreads to the lymph nodes, and this is seen in case of HIV infection. Signs and symptoms that occurs due to a disease, we have learned about this at the beginning of the chapter. So these signs and symptoms are dependent on the tissue or the organ that is targeted by the microbe. So when the microbe targets the lungs, the signs and symptoms are cough and breathlessness. When the microbe targets the brain, the signs and symptoms are headaches, vomiting, fits or unconsciousness. When it targets the liver, then it causes jaundice. So these infectious diseases causes the tissue specific effects. These common effects lead to activation of body's immune system. This immune system fights against the infection. So when this immune system is activated, this immune system recruits many cells to the site of the infection, and thus it causes inflammation. Due to this inflammation process, there are some local effects seen, such as swelling, pain and fever at that exact site of infection. But in some cases or in some type of infection, the immune system is also affected, such as in case of HIV infection, the virus damages the immune system. Therefore, the body shows effects because the immune system is no more functional. So, how do we understand whether the disease is severe or not? So, severity of the disease is dependent on the number of microbes that enter into our body. Also, it is dependent on our immune system's ability to remove those microbes. If the number of microbes are small in number, then the disease manifestations are little or less. If the number of microbes are large, then it can cause severe or life-threatening manifestations. So this was all about infections. Now we need to treat those infections. So there are several principles of treatment. So how does this treatment help us? This treatment reduces the symptoms that we have learned in the beginning of the chapter. So how do these symptoms are decreased? By taking medicines, such that we take medicines to bring down fever, because fever is also known as a symptom of any infection. How to stop or kill the microbes? We know that each microorganism follows different biochemical processes for synthesizing new substances or for respiration. These biochemical pathways can be targeted for treatment. For example, a drug that blocks the bacterial cell wall synthesis will not affect our body's own cells, and these drugs are known as antibiotics. We also learned that it is difficult to make antibiotics or antiviral agents against the viruses. So why is it difficult? Because the viruses have few biochemical mechanisms of their own. They enter our cells and use our machinery for their life processes. Due to this, there are less virus-specific targets. So there is an alternative to treatment, that is known as prevention. There are principles of prevention. So we have seen that if you want to get rid of the infection from the diseased person, it has several limitations. Firstly, the diseased person's body functions are damaged to such an extent that it cannot be recovered. Also, the treatment takes time. The diseased person will serve as a source of transmitted infection. So due to these limitations, we have chosen an alternative to treatment, that is prevention, because we know prevention is better than cure. There are several ways of prevention. Firstly, to prevent the airborne diseases, we will provide a living condition to the healthy person without overcrowding. For preventing waterborne diseases, we will provide safe drinking water. For preventing vector-borne diseases, we will provide a clean environment and maintain public hygiene. Since infection is fought inside the body by the immune cells, so proper functioning of the immune system is required. And for this proper functioning, we need to obtain proper nutrition. We have learned 3 ways of preventing the disease. Now there's a specific way of preventing the disease, that is immunization. So what does this mean? When an infection occurs for the first time, if there is a second encounter with that infectious microbe, our immune system will cause a greater response to eliminate the infection, and this is only called as immunization. For example, in case of smallpox infection, this second time response will prevent the disease. Another way to trigger the immune system to show response against the microbe is the vaccine. There are many vaccines available now to prevent the diseases from the infectious agents, such as tetanus vaccine, diphtheria vaccine, whooping cough, measles, polio vaccine, and hepatitis A. So here we come to the end of the chapter. I hope this tutorial was helpful for you.